Welcome everybody to another episode of State of the Thunder. Oh, I sound like a proper host now. I'm getting so professional. Today is going to be a very interesting session because we have a little bit of a new introduction of a new team member here. It's going to be very exciting for the whole community. And then it's going to be a packed session with a lot of questions about services, our pro offering, some general direction of services, but a lot of the questions are product related. So we're going to try to use this session to deep dive into some details that maybe they don't translate well on paper, or we don't have the opportunity to talk a little bit more in details with all these things. But without further ado, let's start by introducing our new community manager, Mr. Michael Ellis. Welcome. Do you want to say a few words and say hi to the folks of the internet?
Hey, Alessandro. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for introducing me. My name is Michael Ellis. I am beyond thrilled to be joining today for the State of the Thunder and to be introducing myself as the new manager of community programs here at Thunderbird. So absolutely delighted to be joining the team. Joined just been here about a week, so joined last week and excited to be getting up to speed, meeting everyone on the team and working on our priorities as we think about what the second half of 2005 and 2006 looks like for Thunderbird.
2005 and 2006, 20 years later.
2025 and 2026.
It's
You know,
fine. Let's go
all the
back.
all the best
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, yeah. Those were the best years, yes. What are you cooking right now? What are you planning for? Yeah, can you share something? You just started, so maybe it's an unfair question, but can you share something of the plans that you have or the things that you see that could be improved or any upcoming projects?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first focus is obviously onboarding and getting up to speed. But beyond that, it's listening. I want to first kind of put my ear to the ground and hear from our Thunderbird contributors, whether that's longtime contributors or those that are new to the ecosystem. Basically, I'm just curious about what's been working well and where we might be able to improve. We may be launching some light touch surveys or inviting some folks to hop into some ongoing chats that we'll be scheduling or some open office hours that we'll be sharing some details on in the near future. But just excited to gather that feedback and identify where those pain points and opportunities lie. And from there, we'll be working on mapping out the contributor journey so that we can laser in and improve those areas. And then working on improving our onboarding flow, our community documentation, and working to add more community touch points, whether those are co-working hours, meetups, events, or contributor recognition program, but just making sure that our active community feels seen, valued, and appreciated.
Oh, that sounds
Can
very
you
exciting.
can you share, Michael, a little bit? You have a little bit of a history with Mozilla. Can you
I
share
do,
some of the
yeah.
things you worked on in the past? I know some members of our community actually really love tech speakers, for instance.
Yeah, Thunderbird is not my first rodeo. I've been working in community management, specifically for developers and open source communities for the last 8, 9 years. Before Thunderbird, I was involved heavily in the Mozilla project. I ran the Mozilla Tech Speakers program for 3 or 4 years, from pilot to its conclusion. Additionally, I've had stints at several large open source companies, database companies. I worked at Ionic for several years, where I worked to unify their developer community underneath one cohesive platform. And it's been fun. The common theme everywhere I've worked, I would say, is just kind of generating the value for contributors, making sure that the organization appreciates the value that the community brings to the table and that the organization is doing right by the community as opposed to trying to extract from the community. So it's making sure that we are standing by the community and serving them in the proper way as we proceed forward.
Yeah, we're super pumped to have you here, Michael, and I bet you'll have some interesting things to share with this group going forward. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Um,
me
Absolutely.
too.
We do. We're already getting some exciting opportunities. If you take a look at the State of the Thunder meeting notes today, you'll see there's an opportunity to get involved if you'd like to check out and join design committee. We have an opportunity to participate if that's something that you're interested in. And also, if you just have ideas on ways we might improve or pain points or ideas for the Thunderbird community, there's a link, connect.mozilla.org. to a discussion where you can share your thoughts, inputs, and suggestions for the community, and we'll be reading over all those, responding to them, and taking that input to heart. So thanks so much, and hope everyone can take a look and follow up.
Yeah. And for anybody watching this video after the fact or listening to as a podcast, this link is going to be in the description of whatever platform. Monica is very diligent and she always puts all the links
I was just going to
there.
say, you just beat me to it. I was just going to hop on and say, and the link to this
Yes.
Connect post will be up in the resources. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for doing
Thank you so
this.
much, Monica.
Yeah.
Of course.
Awesome, awesome. Before we jump on the questions about all our pro services offering, anyone here has any questions for Michael? Just let's give him a bad first experience on State of the Thunder here. Just ask him some hard questions. Come on,
I have a question.
go for it.
Were you a Thunderbird user before you started?
That's an excellent question, Monica. I'm going to be completely honest. I was not a Thunderbird user before. I would say before about 2022. Make sure we get that year right. Uh, so actually, no, it wasn't until later on I checked out Thunderbird as a project and started as a user.
Which is good because maybe it matches the refresh of the UI, so you got the slightly less outdated user interface. Maybe it wasn't that terrible experience, but it's fine. All right. We can move on our packed agenda or a lot of questions. The first one, so I'm very glad that Ryan is here. Usually, whenever I get these questions or some questions related to budget or services or other things, I'm always alone and I try to answer the worst I can. But Ryan is here, so I'm going to offload pretty much all the questions to him. It's going to be great. The first one is a very generic one I could potentially answer, but I'll leave it to him. With the new services and new pro services and all the other extra efforts and resources that are being invested into the services, is Thunderbird, is the effort put into Thunderbird desktop and mobile going to decrease?
The answer is no. I think everybody on the team can attest to the fact that we've added quite a few new people to desktop and mobile over the last year. There's only so quickly we can add people. I think we all know that, especially those of us who are on the team every day and are trying to onboard new people. The effort around both of those uh, products is not gone down at all. It's only continued to go up. Now, when we talk about Thunderbird Pro and the services that exist around that, and we need to remember that they're projects, they're open source projects, and ultimately they are filling a gap in that there are things that the other solutions in the space, whether that's Outlook or whether that's Gmail and kind of their suite, can do that Thunderbird can't do. And that's because of this kind of decision that we made, whether on purpose or not on purpose, over the lifetime of Thunderbird, which was that everything's going to run on the person's device. And there aren't any server-side components. And this is just taking, and this is a big question to your question, but I think it's important for folks to understand. This is just taking the mission and saying, okay, Thunderbird Story is not just device side, like the user's device. Like if we want to be competitive, if we want Thunderbird to be something that a person can use to fulfill all their communication needs, we have to have the other side of it too. And that's taking our core values of freedom and transparency and privacy and just taking them to yet another platform. So when we look at Thunderbird Send, for instance, that's end-to-end encrypted large file transfer. That's something that right now, if you go on to Outlook or you go on to Gmail, they're going to push you towards using, for their large file transfer, they're going to push you to using Google Drive or OneDrive. And what we are saying with this offering is we don't want folks to feel like they have to go and use one of these other services if they don't want to make the trade-offs associated with using those services, whether it's data mining or, mostly around lack of privacy, I think, for that one. And we don't care if people take send and spin it up on their own server or call their techie friend to host it for them. We don't really care if they use us. I would prefer that they use us as a service provider, but ultimately it's just to correct that missing piece in the Thunderbird ecosystem. And so that's how I would, it's a long answer. It may have answered multiple questions people have, but that's the answer is we're just correcting for missing pieces in the Thunderbird experience with any of these things. And so I reject the premise a little bit that it's diverting resources because this all exists to reinforce Thunderbird clients and make them better and make them a more fully featured client.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Especially you said you called them projects because I think the first reaction that our community had, like, oh, you're spinning new products and you're working on another product. But instead, they're projects of the same umbrella product, which is Thunderbird, and the convergence and the ability to use those projects inside desktop and mobile will happen in the future. So it's all in service of the same experience.
Yeah. Philip, did you have something to add there?
I think you've mostly said everything that is to say there. That's very correct. I think it's, in terms of growth, we're growing as an organization around Thunderbird to support Thunderbird as a project in the community. And, services is another way to do that. I think if this is all successful and we're able to grow very quickly on getting new users on board and getting them excited about what we're doing in the same way that we've been doing that with desktop, then this is an opportunity for us to kind of cross-fund desktop as well and say, hey, we have some good opportunities here on services and that's supporting all the work that we do. And the origins of everything we've created here are in mobile and desktop. So there's no reason to say this money is reserved for services and we should stick it there. We should use that in a way that really supports the project, that supports the ecosystem, and allows us to create something that users really enjoy.
And by and large, we get this question around resources. It's still true that a vast majority of resources go to our clients. We picked up the pace a little bit on getting more hands working on services, but it's still, if you look at where the spend goes in the budget, it's primarily around clients. And additionally, I'm sorry, I know there are other questions and I'm probably answering some of them, so we'll reference what
It's
I
perfect.
say
Yes.
when we talk about those other ones. These to just double click on your point about projects. They are open source projects and they are serving Thunderbird users already. If you look at Appointment's been forked already quite a few times. And I reached out to somebody who had forked it because they had and forking, for those who are on this call who aren't developers, means that they took the open source code and they've modified it in some way to meet their own needs. So Appointment is already being used by a company. I think they make wind turbines, but they've modified it for use within their organization. They're using Thunderbird and they're using Appointment. So already fulfilling the needs of, one clear example we can see, and self-hosted and used by that company within their own, the information isn't leaving the house. And that's really encouraging and that's really great. And that is what our part of our mission is, to give people the freedom to decide, what you've said it before, what tech overlords they want a relationship with. And in their case, they didn't want a relationship with Calendly or whoever. They wanted to own that piece themselves, and they've done that. So, you know, once again, I think all of this reinforces what we're trying to do, which is to liberate people from having to, make these hard decisions about whether or not they want to give all their information to Google or Microsoft or whatever.
Yeah.
We're providing a third way.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, Ryan answered all the upcoming questions. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. No, no, that's a perfect segue that you talked about appointment, because the next question is, it touches a couple of points that you already highlighted, but we can dig a little bit deeper. The question is, why is appointment being developed as a standalone web application and not directly inside Thunderbird? I think one of the most obvious one is exactly what you pointed out. It's much easier to fork and for other people to consume as a standalone project, rather than now you need to adapt the whole Thunderbird suite and you cannot adapt it to your thing. But there are
Well,
a million other reasons there also.
yeah, there's a number of things depending on what piece they're talking about. I assume they're talking about well, I won't assume anything. So the Thunderbird appointment. And Philip can talk to us. We didn't really give a proper introduction to folks who are tuning in to here and didn't tune in to past ones. Philip is both the chairman of the Thunderbird Council and is running the services effort, which includes, send, appointment, Thundermail. So to answer the question, appointment needs a server-side component. Obviously, it needs to be a centralized place to, send the invite, and then the person confirms that they confirm what time they can do the appointment. Okay, now it's on both people's calendar. That's a part that has to be in the cloud. We can't ship it as part of Thunderbird, because if you did that and you shut off Thunderbird for the night and somebody's like, this is the time I want, there's no always on component to make that transaction happen. And so scheduling just wouldn't work right. That's the server side component. Building it into Thunderbird is the other piece. And we're building the services integrations into an add-on for two reasons. One is so that folks don't have to use these services if they don't want to. So if they don't want to use the pro services, they just don't, turn them on. So we're not building it directly into Thunderbird for that reason. Number two is what exactly you said. By having it separated out in its own project, it makes contributing to it and forking it and doing all the things easier. And so that's the add-on piece. And I think that maybe answered the question, or it just confused a bunch of people.
I think that makes total sense. And the server-side component is, I think, the meat of it, right? If you look at what appointment does, it allows you others to schedule with you. If you build that completely into Thunderbird, then it depends on your computer being on when they want to schedule and your internet being able to punch the right holes through your firewall. So that kind of works out. So that certainly makes sense to have centralized in some way. And like the integration points are what's important. What do you need out of Thunderbird appointment? You need to share that quick link with someone. Maybe you can type it out because you've done it a bunch of times, but maybe you don't, and maybe you just want to quick copy paste the thing and don't actually want to go to a website and log in again and click on a thing. But you have that right now available not right now, but you will have that right now and enabled in Thunderbird, so you can just quickly grab that, put it into an email, and say, "Hey, can you just schedule it with me really quick?" So like having those integration points with Thunderbird so that it's easy to use the important parts that are important to you, while still providing that greater service and makes you more effective is, I think, what we're all here for.
Yeah, and Patrick points out in the chat, Patrick, another council member, that the underlying existing protocols and the way that we handle calendar invites and everything don't actually kind of support this self-scheduling, workflow. And what we could do as a project, and I would eventually like to get to this once we get appointment out there and users using it, is develop some kind of standard, some kind of thing around these scheduling tools. Now there are a lot of them out there, and it would be nice if there was some standard developed to make them maybe talk to each other or do something like that. I know there is a draft for, yes, I just saw the vPoll draft. I think that we should help further develop these standards and make this kind of a normal thing on the internet and make it a lot like email, like to where maybe at some point in the future, these things can talk to each other and there can be a world where Calendly and Appointment and Cal.com and they all live together and work together and get people scheduled. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I'm gonna have a t-shirt we written a normal thing on the internet because it's an oxymoron.
Yeah, that's
Will
true.
never happen. Yeah. Yeah, nice. Remaining on the appointment bandwagon, because appointment is one of the services that it's closer to be like open for a beta and then being ready for full consumption. What are some of the upcoming features of Thunderbird Appointment that you are most excited about? And you, in terms of probably you, Ryan, and
I
Philip,
want to
or
hear Philip's
anyone else.
thoughts on this first, and then I'll chime in.
Sure. I think the thing that I'm most excited about might not be the thing that we release with, but one thing that I kind of see missing with a bunch of tools is that group scheduling, as in, oh, you want to schedule with Ryan and Philip? Well, tough luck. Here's Ryan's calendar, here's Philip's calendar. Now you figure it out. And I'd like to be able to say, hey, person, here, schedule a meeting with us. Here's a combined link where you can basically schedule with both. And that would be so useful externally for, just appointment scheduling. It's useful internally as well. Like, if they don't work in an environment where they can just access everyone's calendar, being able to just have those links available makes a lot of things easier. So that I think I'm most excited about in kind of the future vision types of things. In the shorter term, like, even just the service itself is super interesting because I've seen this in so many situations with community or external partners, or being able to actually just give someone a link and say, find something in my calendar is just so much easier than being able to say, here's like three options for this week, and then they get back and, oh, two options don't work anymore, and the one remaining one doesn't fit, and like just all of that back and forth is super annoying. So want to make things less annoying for people.
Philip stole mine because that is the one that I'm, really excited about getting on board. Scheduling with multiple people is even harder than what Philip just described when you're just trying to go back and forth with one person. So like that for me is a big one. But I use appointment a lot actually. And I'm encouraged, I think like anyone creating something new, a new project or a new piece of software, I'm encouraged when it becomes invisible, when you stop thinking about the fact that you're using the tool and that you're just using it. And that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm appreciative that I'm there and I feel like, okay, I'm just going to post my link in here and send it. And I just don't think about it after that until somebody is booked on my calendar. And the next thing is right now we only support one schedule. The next feature I'm excited for is multiple schedules. Right now, my schedule is by default like it's a Zoom link. It's gonna schedule my calendar. It's gonna generate a Zoom link, and that's the meeting. There's another type of meeting that I do much less frequently that I would like to create space for, which is a meeting at a coffee shop with a real person. I just did that yesterday and I went in after the fact and he scheduled my calendar and I changed the location of the invite to be the real physical place. And I'm excited for another schedule that's just like in-person meeting that I can post the link in and get that. So that's the next feature I'm excited for. But overall, I think a lot of folks are going to be really happy with Appointment. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, and I once it's integrated into Thunderbird and you can just one click add the link to the in the compose window, I think gonna help a lot of people move really quickly and be more productive.
Yes.
It's interesting. Maybe we could add a feature in the distant future where it won't only allow you to schedule a coffee meeting, but also have some recommendations for the right coffee shop based on how easy it is to get there, so that you don't even have to select the coffee shop, but can find the mix of your favorites and the other person's
What's
favorites.
funny is what's funny is it's funny that you say that because what I was thinking whenever I was doing this is there should be a drop down of,
Mhm.
at least in the near future, of like 5 or 6 coffee shops that I'm willing to go to meet the person and, let them choose
Yeah.
which of those 6, or whatever that they're willing to do. But someone write that down.
Done.
I'm loving this discussion on appointment. And I just want to say Jesse, who's our senior UX specialist, just did a ton of work on discovery and wireframes headed towards MVP. And we ran a usability study on Topic Box, which we still need to post the summary from that. But Jesse, I just want to see if you wanted to jump into the conversation because I know you've thought a lot about this in the last few months.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I was typing too fast, writing down all of the people's suggestions that were coming up. Um, yeah, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun working on appointment, and I think we did a lot of great things. We had a couple workshops and a usability study, and now hearing everybody's hopes and dreams for the product, I think our next step after MVP comes out and we basically nail the basic use case of here's a page, just get something on my calendar. The next step is to take these potentially more complex situations where you're dealing with multiple people, situations where you're dealing with different locations or different meeting types, and to make those feel just as simple. I mean, it may be a hard task, but it will be worth doing, and that's going to be our goal. So yeah, it's been a privilege to work on it so far, and I can't wait to keep it moving.
Yeah.
And a big shout out, thank you to everyone in the community that contributed to the usability study, whether you completed the whole study or if you just had a looky-loo and checked out some of the wires. That's really cool and we appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for doing our tests. Thanks for responding to our threads. Great.
Thanks for the free labor. Yay. Yes. No, that's great. No, looking forward to it. I need a tool that helps me schedule my Dungeons and Dragons sessions. This is driving me insane. So please, please. All right, moving on. You already answered to this question, Ariane, which was, will I be able to deploy appointment on my own infrastructure? The answer is yes. I would like to repurpose it a little bit, which is a question that sometimes we get from maybe people that are not well versed in open source, but it's a legit question, is what is the point of making this a paid product if people can just download it and run it on their own infrastructure? What is the logic behind
Sure,
that?
sure. The thing is, most people don't want to do that. Even me I spent the first 7 years of my career as a sysadmin, and I don't want to do it. And so like there's a lot of instances where you can't because you don't know how, or you don't because you know how and you just don't want to go through the pain. You'd rather, pay someone else to manage the service for you that, you rely on a third party. And instead of letting it be a Wild West, which it can still be, where you just rely on other providers to run the service, we thought it would be good for us to run these services and offer them to users. And it has a double benefit, which I think there's another question around this, of providing money that sustains Thunderbird. And ultimately, the team has heard this so many times that you're all probably bored about it, but the internet maybe hasn't heard it enough. My number one goal for the past 5 years of my almost a little above 7 years of being here has been to put Thunderbird on a completely sustainable path. That's my goal. And that's what I think about when I wake up every morning. When I came on, Thunderbird was not sustainable. It was not in a place where I felt like we could be certain that it was going to remain around, for the next, I don't know what the time frame was, but I didn't think it would survive beyond, 5 years when I came on. Not in a growing and improving sense. It may have been around, but it might have been kind of abandonware. And what we've managed to do with the support of our community is put it on a very sustainable footing, I think. But being sustainable and being competitive are also two different things. We don't want to be like, we don't want users to say, I use Thunderbird, and yes, it's crappier than Outlook, but I think that the values are more in line with my values. That's not good. You don't want people to feel like they have to compromise a good experience for their values. And so with all of this, the goal is to make Thunderbird more competitive and to make it more sustainable. And there are some folks who we know don't donate to Thunderbird for whatever reason, but have expressed interest in paying for services. So this will provide them a way to support Thunderbird and get the things that they want in exchange. I hope that's not too convoluted an answer, but ultimately it all comes back to we run these services to make it easy for users and to make the project even more sustainable.
Yeah, perfect answer. Thank you. Switching from appointment to Thunderbird Send, which it's my favorite, it's the most exciting things. I can't wait to start consuming. The first question that we got is, Send is currently being developed as an add-on. Any plans for making it part of core Thunderbird? So just being present in Thunderbird without the necessity of installing it as an add-on.
Once again, this is to give the folks the ability to turn on these things if they want to use them. I do believe we will ship the Thunderbird Pro add-on as a system add-on, but by default, folks will have to set it up if they want to actually use the tools. All the reasons we talked about earlier are the reasons why we did it that way. What was this? There was a second part to that question.
No, as like, yeah, any plans for making it part of the core Thunderbird?
No, not in the foreseeable future. But there's a lot in Thunderbird that facilitates this. What makes the add-on usable today is because we built file link into Thunderbird, which lets you use a variety of providers, not just Thunderbird Send. You can use WeTransfer, there are multiple providers who you can use in order to facilitate the sending of large files. And we're using that same thing that's built into Thunderbird. And that's great. These pro add-ons require us to maintain these APIs that will allow add-on developers to create other experiences around them. And so we're just kind of dogfooding our own APIs, which is healthy.
Yeah, I also think this is also an opportunity for us to expand the capabilities that FileLink has. Like, I don't know, based on user feedback or then I guess customer feedback, we might get a suggestion on, hey, it would be cool if Send could do this thing. And some companies might say, that's pretty cool. Let's make Send do that, and nobody else can do this. But I think our default response here would be, cool, how can we expand Thunderbird Desktop so that Send can do this? And what are the add-on APIs that we could provide around this so that other add-ons can do that same thing in that way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's also a very important aspect that I would like to mention about servicing better the majority of our users, if not all our users. We have different release channels. We have some users that are really comfortable in running beta, other users that they want our new primary release channel, the monthly releases. Other users for business reasons or scale reason, they are running ESR. So they only get major features update once a year, once every 14 months, something like that. Send is an important facilitator on making your life easier when you handle large files. Making it part of built directly into Thunderbird would have locked that send version to whatever version you are running. So even if we have improvements, but you're running ESR, you're not going to see those improvements for a year. Making it an add-on, a system add-on, something that we can easily update and send and some and like ship improvements, doesn't matter which channel or release version you're running. It makes it easier to better service all the users. It doesn't matter which version they're running. All right. Keeping it on send still. The other question is very fine details here. Is send if Thunderbird Send is coming with a file size limit for each single file?
I don't believe so. If you want to waste
Uh-oh.
all of your storage on that file, then I think we can do that. I just heard recently from the team that they were figuring out a few solutions for very large files. And, since we don't actually see the contents of the files, finding a good way to do that across storage and chunking that in the right way so that it kind of fits together again, but still is in a way that we can't see it.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer too, Philip. You have a limit as a at least Thunderbird Send user on our instance of how much how much space you have, how much storage you have. And so that will be the upward limit. And hopefully we can facilitate extraordinarily large files. But that's hopefully that's ultimately up to the user. If they want to burn through, the entire storage that they have on that one file, and they can keep their connection stable and everything for that time, more power to them, hopefully.
And what is the basic storage available that we're going to offer with Send?
So, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong here. The numbers I see here are 500 gigabytes.
That's our impression right now of what we'll offer through the normal subscription. And we may have to get creative, on I suspect there will be users who immediately want more than that. And so we may have to think through how we might facilitate that. But I believe that's correct, Philip. I think we're aiming at 500 gig on the normal subscription plan for Thunderbird Pro.
Yeah, and I think, if you look at what are we paying to run this type of service, storage is always the cost that, we essentially have to pass on directly because there's no such thing as free storage. So, that certainly, if people want more, we can at some point offer plans that allow users to give more. But I think for the start and testing out the service, getting us up and running, let's start with a number that kind of fits in well with the ecosystem and expand on that.
Now I know you're jumping ahead because I know there's a question around that.
Oh, really? I
Yes.
didn't know that.
Yes. The well, maybe it's not, but it's the one I hear pretty often, which is like around charging for send and charging for these types of services.
Yeah.
Just to remind folks, we're not looking with these services to become extraordinarily rich. That's not the goal for Thunderbird. Ultimately, and you can ask the team, there's our goal is to spread our values and what we think is right for the internet as far as possible. Not, of course, it's not true of everyone, but for the most part, I feel like that's a core goal that we all share. The thing is, these services cost money, and we don't sell the data. We're not doing any sneaky stuff on the back end to make money from what you're doing. And so the only real way to pay for the services is to ask folks to pay for what they use. And so ultimately, we have a lot of folks asking why we're charging for Thunderbird Send when Firefox Send was free of charge. That was a different funding model. Firefox was making money off of folks who use Firefox, via search contract. And so you're incentivized that way to just bring more users onto the platform. Thunderbird has no, I want our community to hear this. This is why I'm saying it. Thunderbird has no other monetization besides donation right now. And we don't want donors to be subsidizing the use of the people who are using the services. That's not really fair because, not all donors are maybe using the services. And so we're going to ask folks who use the services to pay for their use. And that's ultimately why we charge for any of these services. They carry with them a cost, and we're going to ask the user to provide for that cost and for our time to manage the service.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. There's also always the aspect of it's open source. You can put it on your server, you connect a VFI link to your own instance on Send, and then you manage your own storage if you have a local storage, a NAS or whatever. So we always offer the free alternative for people that are willing to invest the time in doing that. But as Ryan said, storage costs space. We don't want to subsidize to our donors. We're being very transparent, very honest, and we're going to share all the things in terms of what are the costs of storage and our revenues, as we always do.
Yep.
Yep.
And the thing is, the folks who have been asking about free, my challenge back to them is you don't want us to provide this service for free because it seems like a no-brainer now. I feel like people have heard this before, but I'm going to shout it into the internet one more time. If you're not paying for the service or the product on the internet, you are the product. And Thunderbird is a rare exception because it's open source and because it's supported by donation revenue. But with things that have like this ongoing infrastructure cost, it's just not feasible to support that via donation. And so I would encourage folks to think about that with any service that they're using currently. Like how is this service funded? What's the funding model, and is that funding model a result of it mining my data and selling it to advertisers or whomever? So Ryan's wisdom for today.
Kind of related, there's also that, abuse vector as well. Like, if we were to offer this for free for maybe a smaller amount, then probably would take a week or two, and then someone would kind of start misusing that for sharing malware or Juarez or all the things you might get out of the internet for free storage. And, that's not something that we want to attract. We want to attract users that are really excited about the thing that we're doing and are willing to go with us on this journey.
Yep.
Speaking of bad things on the internet, our answer to Gmail and Outlook. We announced Thundermail, our own email service. So we have a couple of questions related to Thundermail. First one is, will I be able to use Thundermail with another email application like Fairmail or even Apple Mail?
Yeah, absolutely. We're at the core of what we do, we support open standards. So we support IMAP and SMTP, which means you can use your Thundermail account with any client that supports open standards, which includes Fairmail and Apple Mail and most email clients, if not all. So there you go. If you really want to use it with something other than Thunderbird, be my guest. Okay, we also support JMAP,
Yes.
which is a fancy new protocol that allows us to do a lot more. And I know for a lot of folks that doesn't mean anything, but for some very technical folks in our community, they're jumping on top of their chair right now and cheering loudly. So we're also trying to push the open standards and get them into more people's hands
Yeah.
through that project.
Yeah, here there's a larger a larger topic or a larger reasoning for us to also do email, other than because we are primarily an email client and emails are an essential part of pretty much everyone's life. There's also we saw a trend that keeps happening is the internet is op it's mostly based on open standards, open communication standards. All your chat applications or all things are on WebRTC or other protocols, your calendar protocols and things like that. But when a large corporation starts releasing products based on those standards, then they start slightly changing those standards and making it less open and adapting it to their needs and closing more that ecosystem. So even if you use email inside Gmail, then suddenly you start having problems if you start using your Gmail account with other applications because they don't read your email as well. They don't use the same threading. The folders are actually not folders or tags. There's all these weirdness of they have the resources to actually modifying the standards and making it a closed standard that no one else can use. Us stepping into this space and using open standards and enforcing open standards and participating with all the other entities that are trying to push the open standards will allow us to have a voice at the table, because right now we've always been the consumers, like we're always been the client that needs to adapt to all the different variation of IMAP that all other services do. But yeah, we're trying to have a voice at the table and force the direction of this.
I wouldn't say that's 100% true. I think Thunderbird has in the past participated in many standards in different ways, like calendaring standards. This is where I got started on Thunderbird, but it was always a big part of like how do we progress. The Cal Connect group is one of the groups that has been driving a bunch of the calendaring standards, and we've been a part of that either directly or indirectly for quite some time. And a lot of the discussions on, what's next in calendaring land actually originated and from work that has been done indirectly through Thunderbird.
Perfect. Related to this, as we are stepping into the email service environment, any plans for future Google-like products inside Thundermail connected to Thundermail? Something like documents, spreadsheets, slides, and notes.
So this is ultimately up to our users and our community. There are already engineers on the team who have pointed out to me how we might get into collaborative document editing or any of these other areas. There's no shortage of ideas for how we might push the Thunderbird Pro and Thundermail suite into those spaces. But ultimately, it's going to turn on how successful we are with what we roll out initially. And so if folks want to see that, I would encourage them to sign up and use the service so that we can continue to grow it and make it a fully featured suite, as folks have come to expect with the likes of the Google Workspace and the Office 365. There's no shortage of ideas for how we can create something that carries the Thunderbird values in each of these spaces that you laid out. But ultimately, we're not going to, at this point, put the cart before the horse and say, like, yeah, we're going to do this when we haven't really gotten the momentum to sustain the services that we're already rolling out. Philip, did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think for some of these services, the stakes are a lot higher. Like, look at document editing. Who are the main users of this service, or the ones that really use it day to day, day in, day out? Those are mostly the corporate users. They need to get stuff done. So if we ever do something like that, we better make really sure that we're doing it really good, and that we're essentially up to par with some of the big corporate alternatives like Google Docs. I wouldn't feel comfortable spinning up a service that tries to be Google Docs, but then only, works in some cases and doesn't really scale well and, caters to the enterprise without being ready for the enterprise. So Yeah, I
I
agree. If this is something that the community wants and we want to do it, let's absolutely do it, but then let's do it really well.
I do think notes is something that could come from a variety of directions. I've already seen folks experimenting in Thunderbird with some kind of built-in notes. I've seen experiments by team members outside of Thunderbird doing notes. Notes is a much lower barrier to jump over, and in a lot of cases, our community has. I just got this morning. People have been saying like, I use Obsidian, but I think Thunderbird should build into it something like Obsidian that just creates markdown notes. This is something that I hear pretty often, and I think there's a universe where we get into that on the client side or through some other means. But uh, we'll keep folks posted
Mhm.
as we think through what that could look like. But yeah, I agree with Philip. The document spreadsheets and slides is a harder lift. I'll give some encouragement though to people who want this. I do think, given just the state of everything, that folks are looking for alternatives in these spaces from Google and Microsoft. And I do think um, it would be good for us to eventually be able to help make the world a better place by giving folks an alternative there. But yeah, it's a bigger lift. So if you want it, sign up for Thundermail, Thunderbird Pro, and you know, as we really get that into a sustainable state, we can tackle other parts of what I see as the modern collaboration suite.
Yeah. Yeah. Thunder Next Cloud. Yes, perfect. Perfect name. Yes. A last question that we have here is a very high level generic things, but do we have a public roadmap for all these upcoming product releases, project releases, something that users can look and see when things are coming, what type of things are coming, and what are we planning?
So we've we've started a process earlier than we have in past years of creating the roadmap. In the past, we've really focused on the desktop roadmap and the mobile roadmap. And we do that in collaboration with the Thunderbird Council. This year, we're starting that earlier. And for the uninitiated, the Thunderbird Council is our community group that is elected from our entire community, that is our co-creator. They're the closest ones in the chairs to kind of the decision making around the product from our community. So that's vitally important that we don't create things in a bubble. This is an open source community. We create it with our community. Now, my hope this year is as we finish up the roadmap, as soon as that's in a state that we can publish it, that we publish but the desktop, the mobile, and the services, which includes all this stuff, those roadmaps in a public place where people can read them and keep up and participate. Hopefully, my perfect world would be some enterprising person in the community sees something on the roadmap and says, okay, like I want to help move that forward, and goes and grabs it and helps us complete it. So uh, that is my hope this year. And Philip, if you have anything to add from the council perspective or from your role on the team, that would be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I'll add something from my mobile perspective. What was important to me when we're thinking about roadmap is that it takes from a number of sources, and it's not just we thought this would be a good idea or it fits well in our narrative, but really, we're looking at what is important to community members. So, um, that also means that what we put out there should be something that the community can see. And for mobile, the way we've actually done that is to use GitHub projects to show our roadmap. So, you can go there today and say, what's mobile doing this year? And you will see an actually up-to-date version of this roadmap. It's not we have our internal doc and we published this at some point. It is the actual roadmap that changes day to day. So if there's a project that needs to take a little bit longer because we had a bunch of legacy refactorings, then you're going to see that update. And the same even down to what is the team at MZLA doing in their 2 week sprint? What are the tickets that they're working on? And this gives everyone the opportunity to say, okay, that's pretty cool. I like this roadmap project that they're working on. Maybe there's something I can do to help expand that. Or, hey, the next thing that's coming up on the roadmap, maybe I can find a head start on that and, take some of the work off the team's back to, I don't know, update the Android platform to something new because, hey, I just did that in my day job for this project here. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to, keep that public and make that public, and we should definitely expand that to all of the projects that we're working on.
Sweet. All right. Well, we're at the end of the hour. Thank you so much, Ryan and Philip, for joining and participating and answering all these questions about services. If people have more questions, they can, of course, join all our mailing list, join Bugzilla, join GitHub. We're going to put our developers documentation in the links and all the beautiful places that people can join. But yeah, until the next session, thank you so much, everybody, and have a fantastic rest of the week.
Thank you so much.